the phone. Good evening, everybody. Welcome back. So we're done with all the emptying out, and we're done with all the what spiritual consciousness isn't, and we're actually going to start tonight on what it is. This is a crossover point, I think. We're in chapter 2. We're up to the section on spiritual consciousness itself, and we're looking at behind our lighter. Look in your eyes, go forward a little. We've been through material consciousness and mental consciousness, and we have 7 topics that we have been using just to give us a comparison of them. And in the word material consciousness is believing that what's out there is real, and mental consciousness is a step higher, and it's the realization that what's out there is an affecting mind, but it still believes it's real. And now we're going to go one more step up into spiritual consciousness. I think we'll just start out and see. I know we're going to get through this chapter tonight, and maybe we'll start in the next one. So let's just start. If anybody has any questions about what we've done so far, you jump in. As usual, jump in at any point. Ask questions. We have plenty of time, so we can pick up anything in more depth than is here if you want to. Although all this material on your spiritual consciousness will be covered in depth in the next 6 chapters.
Well, we're starting at page 34 with the top.
With spiritual consciousness. And we'll move forward to the paragraph or 2, and let's see where we are.
Spiritual consciousness. People at the level of material consciousness are not yet aware that matter is within mind. And people at the level of mental consciousness are yet not aware that mind is within consciousness. If mind is the bubble containing the material universe, consciousness is what mind is the bubble in and what is aware of it. Your dreams can give you a sense of this. When you dream at night, you're actually asleep in your bed, but you often appear to be in your own dream. The you in your dream believes the dream is real. You see, hear, taste, touch, and smell the things in your dream. The dream might be taking place in outer space. You could be in a spaceship traveling across the universe. The entire universe is within your dream. The dream may have an apparent duration of several hours. Then you wake up. Let's say we had an EEG wired to your brain so you can measure its activity. The EEG would have recorded heightened brain activity for only 1 or 2 seconds. Yet to you, in the dream, you appear to have been in the dream for several hours. The sense of time duration was created in your mind, presumably by your subconscious. And where is the vast space that was in your dream? The universe, the spaceship, and others on the spaceship were also created in your mind by your subconsciousness. The time and space in which the dream took place never existed anywhere except in your mind. So we can talk about that dream time and space is taking place in your subconscious. Your subconscious is outside of the dream, generating it and containing it. And when you woke up, you were aware that you had dreamed, were now awake, and the time and space in the dream never existed except in your mind.
So you see, mind creates space and mind creates time. I think it's so interesting that you can have a dream that goes on for hours, and yet the measurable brain activity is really 1 or 2 seconds. Yeah, demonstrated over and over again the rapid eye movement part of your dream, which is the actual part of your dream when you're having a dream. When they measure that, it's usually 1 or 2 seconds, and your dreams often last for hours in all sorts of detail. So it's clear if you consider that time, the sense of the expanse of time, is a creation of your mind. Can be. Doesn't prove that this one is, but it proves that the mind is perfectly capable of doing that. And also, there's all that space in your dream, that room you were in, or the space you were in, or the trip you took, or whatever, all of that space was in your dream. And that all took place somewhere down inside the little neurons flying around inside your brain somewhere. So your mind is obviously perfectly capable of creating space. And also your dreams are 5 sense valid, so it's not just like a movie or a holograph. I mean, things smell, and things have taste, and things have texture, and things have color, and all those things happen. So it's clear by looking. I just love the fact that we have dreams, because it makes it so clear that the mind is in fact capable of doing all of that, and that in fact we could all be dreaming right now, and we could wake up in 1 minute from now and say, "Wow, that was a wasted dream." And get on with whatever it is we do. You know, there's no way of knowing that we won't wake up just in a minute and realize that this was a dream. Yeah.
What causes you to not remember your dreams?
I have no idea. Some people do, and sometimes you do. And I don't know why you don't remember dreams. That's a psychological question.
So when we wake up from this dream, will we wake up to another dream? I mean, is it like... I don't know, my mind just is a number on you.
All I will tell you for sure is what Robert says, and that is that when you wake up, it will be as clear to you that you are awake as it is to you that you're awake when you wake up from the nighttime. And that was Lou's experience too. As clear to them that this is all a dream as it is to you in the morning, in nighttime dreams. No question about it. What you wake up to is what it's all about.
Entering the level of spiritual consciousness means becoming aware of the consciousness that contains the mind that contains the phenomenal universe. We'll go through the 7 concepts we use to explore material and mental consciousness, to be an indication of spiritual consciousness. The remaining chapters of this book will cover them in greater depth.
We probably don't have a clear distinction yet between mind and consciousness. But if the step up, mind is really a function of consciousness, and that will become clear later on. But you might think about the fact that for now, let's just start thinking about what is consciousness, what is awareness. And, I guess the question I would ask is, are you aware of the fact that you're aware? That's the question to me that distinguishes consciousness from the content of consciousness. And mind and all this bubble and all this stuff, including what we call material stuff and everything, is the content of consciousness, and we can start thinking now about the distinction between the consciousness and its content. And we're all aware of the content of our consciousness. But are you aware that you're aware?
Is that the same thing? Are you aware that you are the awareness?
it turns out it is, but that question has philosophical overtones to it. People can immediately get their minds involved and start asking what's the difference between aware and awareness, and what's the awareness, and like you can ask what's the consciousness, and so I'm asking a much simpler question: are you aware of the fact that you're aware? You personally, or the big I, whatever, are you aware that there is awareness happening right now, and it's distinct from the content of it? Are you aware that you're aware? Whoever you is, whatever that awareness is. It's when you just look at the question of the awareness itself as distinct from the content that you get the first glimpse of what we mean by the word consciousness.
Is that the same as the only thing you need to realize is there's nothing to realize? Is that kind of on the same level?
No, that's a much more philosophical statement. This is a very experiential statement. It's asking you a very experiential question. Determine can you be aware of the fact that you're aware? Can you not be aware of the fact that you're aware? Okay, so let's wander through the 7 topics, and this is pretty much, these are real high-level references to the 7 topics just because I want to try to draw the line between spiritual and mental and material consciousness. And we're not at all exploratory, but I don't mind exploring them a little bit now. As it says, the remaining 6 chapters explore them in some depth, but let's go ahead and see what we get.
Matter in spiritual consciousness is the same as matter in mental consciousness. It's one form of mind, within mind. The difference is that mind is now recognized as an instrument used by the consciousness continuum to form its creation. Mind is no longer thought to be creative. It forms the content of the consciousness governing.
You get what I'm saying here? I was thinking earlier that it's like, we'll talk about movies later on, but it's like a movie projector. If you have a old-style movie with a projector and the film going through it. The projector, what I mean by mind is an instrument. Mind is like a projector. The projector takes what's on the film and puts it projected on the screen, manifested on the screen, okay? And so the projector and the screen sort of correspond to mind, and the film corresponds to the content of consciousness. So that what's on the film determines what the projector projects on the screen, what's manifested on the screen. And if you leave the projector alone and you leave the screen alone and you change the film, you get a whole different manifestation. And mind is the instrument that manifests what's in consciousness. So consciousness is really the controlling entity. Is that?
Consciousness is your life, and the mind is what?
No, consciousness is the story that's on the film.
Oh.
Consciousness is the film itself.
And then what does the mind do?
The mind is.
You don't have to see it.
Mind is the mind is the projector and the screen and the light. Mind just takes the contents of the film and manifests it up there on the screen for everybody to look at. That's all it does. It manifests whatever is on the film. It doesn't care. The mind doesn't care what the film is. It doesn't care if there's anybody in the theater. It doesn't care if anybody's looking at it. It doesn't care if you're wearing dark glasses and can't see. It doesn't care if your glasses are rose colored. It doesn't care if you've got astigmatism. Mind takes what's on the film and projects it on the screen. Okay?
What's on the screen at the material world is that
Isn't what you see in it. That depends on you. Mind projects what's on the film.
And the meaning mind is capital M.
There's only one mind.
So how does that Unsplash, like when you're doing mental healing work or you're doing affirmations or something.
We'll get to healing just in a minute,
Okay.
and we can talk about that there. I'm just talking about what, instead of mind being the principle anymore, mind is now just the instrument that manifests the content of consciousness. That's the important distinction between these three levels. Level 1 says matter is real. Level 2 says mind creates matter. Level 3 says no, consciousness creates, mind manifests, and the result is matter. So that's the three levels. I want you to see the three levels I want you to see what the three levels of structure is, because it's going to be important not to mix them into know what spiritual consciousness is.
So I guess that's why you would say the only thing that you need to do is to change your own consciousness. So if you lift your own consciousness, what you're projecting onto the screen changes, your picture changes. And that's the only thing you need to do. I mean, I always hear you say that, meditation and changing your consciousness is the only thing you have to do. But
mind has no intelligence.
But it's just so contrary to human consciousness. Because human consciousness, at least for me, my experience is it tells you to go out there and change. You go out there and you try to change what the circumstances are.
That's material and mental consciousness, so get out there and overcome. And we have 100,000 years of demonstrations that doesn't work. Nothing gets overcome. Because your approach is wrong. I mean, after the first 100,000 years of a technique not working, you have to begin to suspect the technique rather than the application. Yeah, the first 50,000 years might have been just poorly applied, but now it's sort of try to recall what we can find and praise every God we can think of and sacrifice everything we can sacrifice, and it doesn't seem to be any more effective.
So that ties into the question of what do we know if I know if I'm aware? If I don't know I'm aware, then I don't know I'm aware. I mean, that's like, if I don't know that I don't know.
If you don't know that you're aware, then you're not aware of what that you're not aware that there is consciousness. See, most people think that they are their mind and their body, and that's it. And they're not even aware. They're not. They think that consciousness is a function of mind. Okay. They think that the mind is spinning, which is what it does. The mind is brain. The squirrel in the squirrel cage mind. They think that is generating consciousness, generating awareness, and that's.
Now, I've heard Joel allude to that if you work hard or whatever, you can still go out there and make something or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Is that when that happens? Is that because let's just take golf for example. I can talk about golf.
Mm-hmm.
If I practice golf, I'm going out there to change something, but at the same time, maybe my consciousness is being changed because I believe I would be better because I practiced, and therefore I ought to hear different results, or to a degree that you can. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do, and the question is always.
At a different level.
No, it's always. There is no out there.
Okay.
There is no out there.
Yeah, I'm buying that. I have been.
Okay. So you're trying to draw lines that don't exist. I mean, the content of your consciousness has the manifestation showing you out there practicing. If you're out there practicing, it's going to change the content of your consciousness.
Okay.
Okay. And don't worry if it's not holding together yet tonight. We haven't started yet. We're just getting started. So just let it in and don't agree and don't disagree. Just hear it. Try to understand what we're saying. And if you don't understand what we're saying, that's fine too, because it will all become clear on the second or third or 100th time. At least I hope it will. All right, so who's next? Read power.
In spiritual consciousness, there is only one power, the power of the one consciousness to create and sustain itself. One of Joel's most important principles is one power, no power. Since the one consciousness does not create any other powers or anything else but powers, there is only the one power. And since there is only one power, there is nothing on which to use it. And there is no more overcoming. There is nothing to overcome.
In material consciousness, everything's a power. There are 10 million powers. Germs have power, and guns have power, and bombs have power, and flu has power. And in mental consciousness, it's realized that the mind is the thing that has the power, and that all the material powers are really manifestations of various mental powers, and that mental power really can overcome them, but it's still all about overcoming. And in spiritual consciousness, the recognition is that there is, and we'll talk about that more when we get down to God down here, but the statement is that there is one consciousness, which is what we call God. And that consciousness is the consciousness which is correctly driving mind to manifest everything that is, and it's the only power. It's the only source. It's the only film in mind, in the projector, although we see different films based on what we're seeing. And we won't get into that until we get there. But there is the one consciousness that is the one that is driving mind, that is driving total manifestation, and that's the only power. So we're finally down to one power. And since there's one power, there's not other powers to overcome. And so the big distinction, hopefully see it by the time we're through it, is the big distinction between spiritual consciousness on the one hand and the mental and material consciousness on the other hand is there is no more overcoming. There is no longer anything to overcome. That's a huge difference. And that's the difference between spiritual consciousness and human consciousness, material and mental consciousness, are both forms of human consciousness. Spiritual consciousness is the spiritual being, and material and mental consciousness are the human experience. Okay? Yeah?
Would it be correct to say that consciousness is the awareness that knows that I'm aware?
Yes, it certainly includes that function at least.
Okay.
Yes, certainly.
For this last line that you said, spiritual consciousness, there's nothing to overcome. So, like, if I'm believing in some appearance, if I'm experiencing the discomfort of some appearance of whatever, lack or limitation or disease, then I just know I'm not in spiritual consciousness.
Yes, and you got two choices. You can go out there and try to fix it, or you can try to rise above it.
Right.
And that's the basis of the statement that we'll probably hear a lot of here in this work, and that you hear a lot of from Joel, people like that. You hear it everywhere. That you can't fix the problem at the level of the problem. If you're going out there trying to overcome it, you're at the level of the problem, and you won't fix it. You may overcome it today, but the consciousness that produced that problem in your life is still your consciousness. And it will produce it again in your life tomorrow, because mind just manifests what your consciousness contains. So if you want to change the circumstances of your life, you have to change the film.
But that has to be absolute. It can't be contaminated there's either or. There's no a little bit on this side or that.
Oh no, there's all the time. You can get lifted above it. You can get lifted a little bit above it.
Just being aware of it is, you're already a little lifted. If I'm suddenly just aware that this is an appearance,
if you have any single little click of understanding, the picture changes, because that changed the film.
Isn't that like the AA saying, if I'm not a problem, there's no solution, just boil all of them down?
Sure. There's a lot of truth in AA. Yeah. If you have any realization in your mind, any realization in your consciousness, I mean you grok it, not that you get it intellectually, you really grok it. I know that common base you have to do with Red Hyman's.
Come on.
A few of you have.
Try to live it.
Grok it means you get it all the way to your toes, okay? If you really grok it, then the film has changed and the manifestation changes permanently. Also, you can get lifted through being in the presence of somebody's consciousness that is higher than you and see it for a while and then slip back down. That's what happens to all of us that went to Tony's class. We get lifted way up there, you know, and we start seeing nothing but harmony and bliss. And then it goes back to wherever the hell it is in Florida he goes, and we all settle back and go into the doldrums, you know. But we get glimpses, you know, and the good news is every time you get lifted up, you never take it back all the way. You think you've had a glimpse, and so you are permanently changed. You're not permanently changed as high as you get when you live the higher consciousness.
Wouldn't you be more loving? Because I've seen a lot of people come back from this one kind of more unloving.
Yeah, I don't know what you see. No, you're saying different.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but it would seem that they would come back, that they would be lifted, and being lifted, they would be more loving.
Yes.
Watch me be an asshole, and then your perception, like when I'm smashing someone in the face, you'll go, that, you know, it's very clear that I'm being a dickhead. I'm probably the biggest dickhead that people have met. And I'm just proving a point to a lot of people when I do that. And I'm not saying this in a kid, I'm saying it to make a point that wouldn't they be more loving being lifted like that?
Yes.
Sometimes, Sean, I've noticed that there's a bit of, you know, the fact that when I go out and I get really high in spiritual consciousness, and then I come back into the everyday and I'm away from that, it's almost like this feeling of even more of a constriction that I hope is temporary, and I think that it is. And then I expand again, you know, back to where I was. But maybe that's what you're seeing is that rebound of the expansive and then
I've been watching it for years.
But I think that it's also that like 2 steps forward, you know, 1 step back. You're always ending up a little bit.
That's not my experience. Neither of those is my experience. So, it's all personal experience. You had a question?
I just wanted to say that your thing about rocking is, at least for me, spiritual consciousness is a physical experience. I feel it in my body completely. I don't know that I would ever feel it. I don't know, I guess you can't really feel things intellectually. But I feel it in my body. My body, I don't really know how to explain it other than to say that it is all the way from to your toes.
Yeah, and there certainly can be physical repercussions of what's standing in spiritual consciousness. It's not in your body. But your body is one of the picturings of the content of your consciousness, so if your consciousness changes, your body should change. The other side of that is that our humanhood is very much locked up, clenched inside our body, muscularly and glandularly and everything. Our kids live in the body, and the kids are all the clenching and hanging on to all the old stuff is physical. You know, it's all just physical knots, and getting lifted spiritually certainly can open some of those knots. The other experience is when I was with Robert, you know, just hanging with Robert, with no realization, I'm just hanging with Robert, and I came out of there, and my skin was buzzed, and every cell in my body was buzzing, and just his height, you know, so that was. And the fact is that was the only way that I could be aware of what was going on, you know. And of course, my cell phone buzzing, but, you know, if I'm to be aware of it, the only tool I have to be aware of it with are the five senses, and so it has to feel that way. And I still feel it now, even when I'm aware of my body in the non-physical sense, I always feel it because of buzz and glow and stuff. So, yeah. Our mind, while we're having this human experience, interprets spiritual stuff physically, because it cannot. I mean, it doesn't have any other tools until we're ready to believe this one. So, yeah. All right, let's pass through religion on to God. What other religions do you think?
Okay, religion. There really are no mystical religions, just mystical teachings, which are different ways of pointing at the mystical experience. The mystical experience is the religious experience. It's an individual, private, personal experience. No one can have it for you. There's no need for a church, no need for ritual, no need for structure, no need for anyone to get received for you. Either you're having it, or you're not having it. The goal of any true mystical teaching is to lead you to have the experience yourself, thus freeing you from the teacher and the teaching. There is nothing to organize, and those who have had a mystical experience typically have no desire to organize anything.
Okay. So there will never be schools of true mysticism, because there's one mystical experience, which every mystic has had. Buddha's experience and Lao Tzu's experience and Jesus' experience were exactly the same. And they're reported entirely differently, because the students, the disciples, the people that it's being reported to determine what can be reported.
Yes.
As does the background and heredity and everything of the mystic who had the experience. So they will teach in terms of concepts they have, and they will teach at the level that those who have come to hear them can hear. And that's what looks like different teachings. But there's really only one mystical teaching. There's only one mystical experience.
I just wanted to mention that Thomas King says that the fruit of sentiment prayer, the method, will be the destruction of all hierarchical systems.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. If you've had the experience, everything washes.
Mm-hmm.
And you can read all the mystical poets, and you can read, there's thousands of people that have had the mystical experience to different depths. But they're all clearly describing the same experience, and so different languages and different terms, and they usually use poetry because it can't be said in prose. They're all different levels of the depth of that experience. And the reason we sing about Lao Tzu and Buddha and Jesus and a few people like that, Sankara and Muhammad and Moses and the ones that had enough light that the visions happened after them. That lets us see the depth of their experience. I mean, that a man could have an experience meditating under a Bodhi tree and still be influencing half the known world 2,500 years later speaks to a lot of light, And so the works that result from the experience usually indicate the depth of the experience. Although there are people who have had experiences as high as those who haven't found what they hadn't done and didn't do anything with it, because that wasn't what they were doing. But other people were just as clear as Jesus, for example, who did not found religion, having finding religion, founding a religion, fact, they were much more interested in finding 3 or 4 people that they could pass the information on to, which is better than Jesus did, as a matter of fact. As far as finding people that we could directly pass the revelation on to. So, anyway, there's one mystical teaching. There may be lots of different organizations that claim to teach mysticism, and there may be lots of different organizations that claim to teach spiritual truth, but the sure measuring stick is, are they telling you about it, or are they trying to teach you how to have it? Are they trying to lead you to where you're having it? Which is to say, are they trying to put themselves out of business? Because teaching mysticism is impossible. What you can do is help something pointing at the moon, you know. The best you can do is point at the moon and hope that somebody will glance up. And if they glance up, then they're gone. You know, they're not going to hang around with a hand, right? I mean, they got it. So true mystical teaching tries to put itself out of business.
I had to ask you some nagging. I don't know if you're not regressing here, but you've stated that 100,000 years proven that it's been ineffective, or that it hasn't worked, and it kind of nagged me as to what you meant. And so, the mind not having created the problem can't contain the solution. I think it was Einstein, so he said it's just like that. Is that the same thing? Is that basically the human condition seeking to go out and change their environment is a failure? How can that be? I mean, if there is no problem to overcome, it's just the fact that we're not aware of it is the failure?
The failure? Yeah, the failure is in the human experience. The failure is in the human experience is kind of 100,000 years trying to overcome the problem. And so, no record of success. No problems that the human beings have had that they've overcome. There is not peace, there is not health, there is not sanity, there is not security, there is not well-being, there is not love. You know, these are the things that humanity has been striving for 100,000 years.
But is that a failure? I mean, maybe it's supposed to take 200,000 years.
Don't pick on my words. There's no demonstration that overcoming is a finite solution. There's no demonstration of progress. There's no reason to invest any money in the overcoming approach. There's absolutely no reason there's no demonstration that it's had any success, and there's no reason to think it ever will.
Well, I guess that's where that's my dilemma. When I hear you say that, I think, well, you know, the average length of life is better, less disease. I mean, there's still all of those things still exist. So I would personally say, well, okay, the measure of success is to where people no longer, I guess it's the level of happiness. Because isn't the whole goal to be happy?
There's no indication to me that people are happier today than they were 1,000 years ago. There's no indication to me today that people are healthier than they were 1,000 years ago. Look around the world. You're living here in Hermosa Beach. Look around the world.
There's definitely more enlightenment. There's more experiences of consciousness.
Sure, there's 6 billion people instead of 2,000. Yeah. And consciousness is growing. But I'm not saying that spiritual consciousness doesn't grow. I'm not saying that spiritual consciousness doesn't work. I'm saying that human consciousness doesn't work. And the fact is that through the process of elimination and exhaustion, people are being driven to trust the Right?
And they are mental forces.
Yes, that's what's happening. I mean, they're dropping their churches, they're walking away in disgust from everything that's been given, you know, and occasionally somebody finds a true teaching rather than some new crystals and butterflies teaching, and
do you believe in I guess the sort of critical mass aspect here that they speak of in Celestine prophecies, where eventually enough people are on that path and it's almost exponential? You're not people affected by light or the understanding of consciousness,
I
or
don't think about that,
you know?
and what I believe doesn't matter.
Other question
Just one more thing.
about your experience when Rashneesh got silent, and there was that. And it was a little scary. Is that kind of being lifted? And because I had that happen when I don't know my experience, but is it just so huge that you're not used to it, that there's like a fear? I don't even know if the word is fear, but it's just like, whoa, I've never experienced this before. And then when you leave that, is it, I'm talking about going to see like Tony or something like Master and then leaving and coming down. Is it like a coffee crash or something?
I don't know. Talk to him. I don't know.
Well, we're talking about spiritual consciousness, mental consciousness, and physical consciousness. And so,
I don't know what people experience, and I don't know what
I'm asking you what about your experience.
My experience doesn't matter. That particular experience with Rashneesh is isn't relevant. All right, let's move on to God. Unless there's more about religion.
Yeah, God is the one consciousness. Spirit consciousness and God are synonymous. In the mystical experience, it is realized that all there is consciousness, oneness. There is nothing else, no duality, just consciousness expressing itself as everything.
Okay, and that's what we'll start. The next chapter is about. All there is consciousness. So consciousness and God and spirit are synonymous. Is the important statement in that particular paragraph. Okay. Prayer.
Prayer. In spiritual consciousness, prayer is replaced with a variety of spiritual practices, including prayer and meditation. Joel uses the word prayer to mean sitting silent, expecting, awaiting conscious contact with spiritual being. He's very clear that it does not involve words or thought. Others would call that meditation. Other spiritual practices include yoga, chanting, reading spiritual books, listening to spiritual tapes or CDs, sitting with higher consciousness. The purpose of all these practices is attaining mystical experience. Of course, we won't be there. We can't have the experience of oneness, but the experience can happen.
Okay, so here is where comes in all the spiritual practices, including meditation, whatever you call meditation, including centering prayer, including the old contemplative meditation, including what Joel calls prayer, which many people call communion with God, and any of the spiritual disciplines that tend to lead one higher is the role, it fulfills the role of prayer in mystical teaching. And Robert was always very clear that he never downplayed any of it. If it's working for you, or if it's bringing you light, or if it's bringing you joy, pursue it. And run it to the end.
It's like when I go to St. Cross on Sundays. I don't know how much religion it is as much as sitting in consciousness with some higher people. The guy that's there has a real way of expressing truth in silence and encouraging, and it gives me, and it's just my practice, but it gives me a comfort that is not that I need it, but there's nothing that I need to be saved from, but it allows me to I always have a better week when I go than when I don't. And so it's just, whatever it is that I think about the religious aspects of it, I don't really care. I just know that in that there are aspects of the mystical teachings.
And that happens.
Yeah.
That's perfectly reasonable. And there's nothing wrong with the pursuit of comfort. Comfort is comfortable.
Yeah.
Supply. Spiritual supply is the opposite of human, material, or mental supply. It is outflow rather than income. The outflow of the spiritual oneness into manifestation in mind. In spiritual consciousness, supply refers to spiritual things, not material things. There are no material things, just images, mental concepts of spiritual things manifested in mind. Jesus said it well when he told us to take no thought for material things, but rather to seek spiritual realization, the kingdom of God, and all material things will appear. Thus, supply is another word for the grace we experience as part of the spiritual realization.
Now that's the point that is the crux of the difference between, one of the cruxes of the difference between spiritual consciousness and human consciousness. Everything is outflow. Nothing is income. And supply is an example because in the material world, all things supply is income. Having a good income is our sense of supply. And in spiritual consciousness, if God is the one consciousness expressed as us, then the creative function is within us, which is consistent, of course, with AA and with positivism and such like. But God is within us. And if God is within us, if the one power is within us, if the creativity is within us, then, and if everything is the effect of the conscious flowing to separately, if everything is within us, the creative power is within us, and God is within us, and the source of everything is within us, then the only way we can experience is to let it out. That's the front thing, to let it out. So we have to let it flow through us. The other side of it is if if consciousness is what's driving mind to manifest stuff, and in this case, God is the consciousness that is the film and the projector that's producing what's on the screen, then everything that's on the screen is effect. It's all, and so we can say, without using the movie analogy, everything that we see in mind, everything that's manifest, everything that's out there is effect. There's no causes out there. There's no sources out there. Everything that's out there is projection of the content of consciousness. Okay? So there's no way we can get anything out there. It's all effect. The source is not here. So if you want more love in your life, you've got to go to the source to get more love. And the way that's going to happen is you're going to have to be, and it's within you. So the way you're going to experience more love in your life is to become transparent enough to let more love flow out through you. And if you want more companionship in your life, then you have to get clear enough to let more companionship flow through you. In other words, if you want more companionship in your life, be a companion. If you want more love in your life, love more. Now, believe it or not, if you want more money in your life, spend more. Mm-hmm. Same thing. It's all spiritual. It's not that love is spiritual and money is material. It's all spirit. But that's a harder step to take psychologically, or take consciously. And perhaps you'll want to do some work on that one before you just go up there and start dancing. Don't overplay your...
Did I just miss something? Don't overplay your... I think I missed something very important just now.
But it's all outflow. My point is that the whole shift becomes one of letting it flow out through you rather than trying to acquire. And that's another very fundamental distinction between spiritual consciousness and human consciousness, is that human consciousness is about getting, and spiritual consciousness is about getting out of the way and letting it flow. And it is a fact, and we'll talk about supply later on in some of these chapters, into that and whatever that's we want. We spend a week on supply, or if you want to, we spend a whole class on supply. But the point is that it's about letting it flow from within out, not blocking it, is the technique in spiritual consciousness. So it's diametrically opposed to what we're conditioned to believe. And it's demonstrably true that the spiritual principles work as it's been demonstrably true. Material principles don't work.
So in the Abraham work, I got this thing where it says appreciate all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Find something to appreciate about every person you see, every situation. You're constantly appreciating, and then you, rather than trying to get appreciation, which is one of the horrible experiences you can have, trying to get people to appreciate you, right? Is that completely lined up with what you just said?
So yeah, let me make that a little clearer. We have just enough principles here, and we'll get into it more in depth later. But first of all, if I'm trying to get appreciation, it means I don't have it. I don't have appreciation for myself. I need it, right? And since I'm manifesting the content of my consciousness, I'm manifesting no appreciation for me. Okay, so that's one side of it. The other side of it is, if I'm out there appreciating you, and if in fact all there is one, then what I'm doing is I'm out there appreciating myself. Okay? And that is reflected to me as appreciation of myself. So you see how it works spiritually? Exactly backwards.
Yeah, the other thing that I've been getting is because every time I make a judgment about somebody, usually negative, I'll say, I save myself by saying, I'm that.
Mm-hmm.
I am that one who's doing that annoying thing up there.
That's right.
Then, well, it stops the mental.
Sure.
I stop.
Yeah.
It's no fun judging me.
That's right. That's the point.
I'm like, that's judgment.
Mm-hmm. That's right. I'm sure you are. We all are. And yet, when we're judging others, if we realize that, if we get high enough in spiritual consciousness to realize that there's only one,
right,
then we see that we're judging ourselves, and that's when judgment stops.
As we produce others with responsiveness.
Mm-hmm. That's where that comes from. All that stuff makes sense. And it's not like somebody's up there keeping score, it's that we're setting it in motion. I mean, Bill, as you sow, so shall you reap. It's not a judgment or a scorekeeper or something. It's a force of nature in action. You know, what I put out is what I get. I'm putting it out to me. That's what it is.
We were at one point about going from within and letting it out.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it important to be just aware of where that's coming from? Because if I'm giving outwardly, and I'm giving because I think if I give outwardly, I'm going to get something back, that's a different space than giving from within, from a source of gratitude. Like if I'm completely grateful for something that I've received, and now I want to give outwardly because I'm so appreciative and I'm showing my gratitude, then that comes from a totally different space, a totally different source of giving.
outwardly, as opposed to, you know, well, I know if I do this, kind of like a tithing thing. Say you tithe, but if you tithe because you're so grateful for what you receive, that's a different state than if I give this, I know I should do it, and if I do it, I'll get back something.
Then you won't.
Exactly.
Then you won't, because you won't be putting it out there.
Exactly. So I'm just saying
That's a business proposition, and that's not an act of love.
well, that's why I'm just saying you mentioned the words from within, out. I think that's an important separation, and it's an important perspective to look at when I'm giving. You know, where's it coming from? It's coming from love, it's coming from gratitude, it's coming from appreciation.
Yeah. My point is, at still a higher level than that, my point is that it's not me giving, it's me becoming transparent and letting it flow out from me, through me. My statement was that we need to become transparent and get out of the way and let it flow out there.
So I'm not even doing it.
Well, you're approaching it. If you're starting to give out of appreciation for what you have, that's a step in the right direction.
So the action is almost inconsequential. It's the intention.
That's pretty philosophical. So what that means.
Well, I mean, the action, you can do the same action with different intentions, and the intention is what affects the difference in the result.
That's for sure.
So the action itself is inconsequential. The intention is what really affects the result.
Sure. That's true.
And if it is you giving, you're going to find out, because when the person doesn't appreciate you, you're going to be pissed off.
Or if you don't get the result, if you have these expectations, you're obviously not going to get the result that you thought you wanted because you weren't doing it from the place that was necessary to create the results. And you said,
That's just indication you're human. I mean, you're now overcoming, you're now manipulating, you're now being human, and that's not spiritual consciousness, either one.
mm-hmm.
Spiritual consciousness is realizing that all there is God, and that there's nothing to overcome, and that there is no me, that I have nothing, and just getting transparent and letting it flow out through me.
Just don't do anything, really.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the problem is that if you even in the words that you use, knowing that the words can't be truth because they're words and they're fallible by definition, I guess, but is that to get more money, you got to give them money. Well, hold on a second. No, because you can't go out with intention to get more money.
You just have to recognize that you're in abundance. You get into that state.
That's fundamental.
Mm-hmm.
And yet Joel does say specifically in the book, although I've never been able to find it, I've read it once, if you're in a complete block on supply and you don't have anything, he says, then give some money to unblock the supply.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, if you don't have anything to give, steal a 10 and give it away.
Well, it's counter-reaction then. That's what he's talking about.
No, he's talking about trying to pump and stuff in supply. With whatever you got in the house. If you never got something in the house. I have to believe he didn't really say that because, I recall very clearly reading that in the Gold Book, but I have yet to find anybody in the world who has also read it. I'm sure I've read all of Gold's books since then and haven't seen it again. Nonetheless, I thought it may have been a personal revelation from the old historian. Or it may have been too early in my sobriety. In any event, the point is, it's flow. And Meg Johnson does say that, I'm not sure exactly, but when she's talking about writing checks to pay your bills, and she essentially says, the larger your bill is, the more grateful you should be.
The more grateful.
The more grateful you should be. The higher the bill, the more grateful you should be, because that increases your demand that's being made on you for outflow, which will, of course, increase the inflow. So, and she's a very clear spiritual teacher, so that's a spiritual principle that I'm sure she understands. I'm sure it's part of her experience. let's do healing. Yeah, we're at 8:30, so let's read the last three paragraphs and then we'll what do you want.
So in spiritual consciousness, healing is essential. The realization that there is nothing to do. If it's all God, all an expression of the one consciousness, and the nature of that one consciousness is perfection and harmony, what's to do? If we aren't experiencing harmony, it's because we haven't yet risen in consciousness to the level where it becomes our experience. Going to the spiritual practitioner for a down of an apparent difficulty amounts to asking for help and being lifted to the level of consciousness where the problem disappears.
The most important thing to get from this chapter is some clarity on what we are not pointing at. We are not pointing at mental or material consciousness. Spiritual consciousness has nothing to do with getting or acquiring. It has nothing to do with overcoming or applying power. It has nothing to do with anything material or corporal. It has nothing to do with anything in duality, especially any separate God that can be used. It has nothing to do with anything we can think, understand, or figure out. It transcends all of that. That's why it's also called transcendental consciousness. Okay? What does corporeal mean?
Body.
Body.
Corpus. Body. Question? Yes.
You were saying before about when we're talking about the mind, and it's just it's the outfunctioning of our consciousness, and then you were kind of talking about, like, I think if your mind, you get into that mind, the mental state where your mind's spinning, I think you said. So if your consciousness is your mind is reflected in your consciousness, what is that, what's driving that spinning then? Is it just when you're in mental consciousness then?
Yeah, it's your consciousness. You're just thinker. Mind manifests matter, and another function of mind is manifests thought. And it depends on the content of the consciousness that's driving it. And it just means that the consciousness that's driving it is not a silent consciousness.
So does your consciousness get quieter, or you get more silent within yourself, and then you don't have that dramatic quiet, and your mind gets quieter?
Yeah, your consciousness gets quiet. Mind doesn't get quiet. Mind just reflects within consciousness. If your consciousness is quiet, there won't be all that thinking.
And then that part, because I was reflecting, or reading this part where it says take no thought, and that's great in concept, and I've tried to practice that, but sometimes if you're not there, you're not there. Not there all the time. It's hard not to take thought for things of, whatever that might be at the time, But then there's other times when I am more quiet and I cannot take thought and I understand the concept, but it's hard to always practice that.
Sure. Obviously, you can't stop taking any thoughts for what you will eat or how you're going to pay the rent or stuff like that. But you can start being aware that a consciousness as high as Jesus says there's no reason to take thought. You don't need to do that. But he says, it's take no thought for blah, blah, blah. Instead, keep your mind stayed on God. Keep your mind in the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added unto you. What he's saying is that when you have attained spiritual consciousness, all this stuff happens to you. Okay, now you're not going to attain spiritual consciousness like that, so you need to do some taking thought while you're at it. But the point is that the taking thought day to day is in the overcoming level, and whatever you accomplish will disappear, and come and go and all that sort of stuff. So what you want to be working on is achieving the state of consciousness, the state of spiritual consciousness, being in the kingdom, where all these things are added to you automatically. And we'll talk about that as we go on in class. But the fact is, if you achieve spiritual consciousness, you will not need any longer to spend any thoughts at all on things material. That all flows. The point is that having achieved the transcendental consciousness, your life happens through grace. Okay? But I heard Joel say, I was listening to just the other night, that when Jesus says, take no thought for tomorrow, what you shall eat or what you drink, he's not talking to human beings. You know, human beings can't do that. When Jesus is making statements like that, he's talking about the ramifications of having spiritual consciousness.
So if you take away that mind, what then consciousness is left? If you don't filter your consciousness through your mind,
you can't take away mind. There's just one mind, and mind is what manifests.
Okay.
But what you can take away is, and we haven't got there yet, but the fact is that you don't see. Let's assume that God is the film, and mind is the projector, and it's showing on the screen. Okay, and if that's the case, then what's on the screen is totally harmonious, okay? But you've got astigmatism and cataracts and dust in your eyes and goggles over your eyes and all sorts of stuff in there, so what you're seeing bears very little relationship to the film that's being shown, okay? So what you got to do is clear up your eyesight. And that's the process of achieving transcendental consciousness. And what's there is perfectly harmonious. What you're seeing is your human concepts. To that extent, the content of your consciousness is driving, and in this sense there's a personal mind. There's really only one mind, and it's the same tool that's working for everybody, but locally speaking, and this is all finger pointing, please understand, but locally speaking, what you're seeing is what your consciousness is driving, mind to produce. Okay? So you're seeing your concepts, and I'm seeing my concepts, and she's seeing her concepts. And when the three of us have no concepts at all, we'll all three be seeing what is. We'll all three be seeing what is. Hence the first chapter of this book being not concepts.
And that's why Buddha, Jesus, and they have the same experience.
Right, and they got the opposite concepts.
When you're saying one mind, do you mean like one mind, or do you mean all of us have one mind?
I mean, there's only one consciousness, and there is only one mind, and we each have an individual expression of that. So what I'm saying is that which is conscious in you is exactly that which is conscious in me. And the mind which is manifesting your concepts for you to see is the same mind which is manifesting my concepts for me to see. Okay? It's the same tool. But since you're looking at it, since for you it's manifesting your consciousness and for me it's manifesting my consciousness, we're having different experiences. But the fact is that we all are seeing this room, and we're all seeing the 20 people that are in here and such like, although we probably are all seeing each of us differently. That's the fact that there's one mind, so I mean, we all agree that there's 20-some people here, and we all agree that her shirt says soda. But the way we all see Adele is totally different. The way you see Adele and the way I see Adele and the way Adele sees Adele are three totally different concepts of Adele. And none of them bear much resemblance at all to the way God sees it. That's what I'm saying. But there is just the one mind, and it's just the one consciousness expressed as her, and it's you and it's me, and it's just one life living her and you and me.
So we all have these different visual impairments.
Yes. All the concepts. Chicken eyes, so to speak.
I remember when I first came here and I heard you talking about this stuff, and I was like, what is he talking about? because it's really incomprehensible, I think, by your mind.
Absolutely. That's why it's called playing with the moon.
Right.
You got it.
Yes. But I think that if you try lots of different spiritual practices, meditation, dance, all different things that we mentioned, but also a lot of physical things that speak to women, and then you can experience that 1 minute, then it's like, oh, now how do I get there all the time? And so at least then you know, right, like, what we're talking about. Then you see the moon, and now you just want to keep getting there, right?
Mm-hmm. Or another glimpse of it.
That was.
Maybe they stand a reflection of the moon in the pond.
Okay, there you go, yeah.
And I see a reflection through the one moon, and I see a reflection there, and there's a reflection in that fountain, and in that pond, and the tail over there, and it's all one moon, and all these different reflections, which are distorted by what they're being reflected in. If you saw the moon, there would be no question about anything. You would say, ah, shit, and walk away laughing.
Forever.
Yeah, laughing and laughing and laughing. But yeah, I mean, all spiritual practices, almost all spiritual practices, lift you closer to getting there, and you get little clicks and little clicks and little clicks, and it becomes clearer and clearer. And hanging out in this crowd helps lift you to where you can understand it, and definitely listening to Bill or Robert or Barbara or Ray Johnson will help you understand it. Eckhart Tolle, there's lots of. There are a lot of masters who are published now who use English. Rashneesh, however, who spoke English, but Indian English was the clearest man I ever met in every teaching. So there's lots of places. Let me say one more thing. And Rashneesh always talked about the rose and the fragrance of the rose. And I really got that. He says, so somebody says, what's a rose? So you hand him a rose. And he gets out his tweezers and he pulls the petals off of it and he pulls the stamen out of it and he pulls all the things apart and the leaves off, and he just assembles it down into all the component parts, and he's got all the stuff on there. And he's saying, I still don't know what a rose is. And he walks away in disgust. And the next morning he's walking down the path and he smells something. He says, a rose. All the time that he's been taking the rose apart, he's been inhaling the fragrance and getting what a rose is all about. And the next morning he detected the fragrance and knew it was a rose. Okay, so go ahead and dissect the thing. It's just fine, because what you want to be is in the fragrance. That's what Rashneesh is. Rashneesh is pure fragrance. That's the right word. It's just nothing but fragrance. Pure fragrance. And that's what you want to be. You want to get the fragrance, but you don't really know how to do it with the petals and stuff. And that's fine. The fragrance is there. We just don't know that there is such a thing as fragrance, but we're inhaling it all the time. So hang out in consciousness and you get open. And let's stop there. On for a minute. And lost card. New one for next week. The only thing that needs to change is my perception. I would appreciate it if you would stack the plastic chairs against that wall and stack the against